Join the team.
Hey team, it's McGuire and today the long-awaited review of Gloomhaven Jaws the Lion. Now, when this first came out, we did a giveaway on this game. We also did a full unboxing of this game, and I did promise to come back and do a review of Jaws the Lion. Now, the thing was, I really wanted to have that review come out a week to 2 weeks after the original unboxing that we did on this came out. However, we did not do that because of a couple different reasons. And I'm just going to set this here to the side, because this is really going to be more of a conversational review than putting it all out on the table again and going through the gameplay, going through how it works. That's really not necessary at this point. There's been a number of videos already made on this, and if you are curious on how the game plays or what it looks like all put together, you can find a video out there on that already. There's really no reason for me to just replicate more content on it from that perspective. I'd rather just have a conversation more about the game and the gameplay and what I think you're really going to like from this title and what you may not like from this title, depending on how you play this game. So, why did it take this long? Well, it took this long because, one, I wanted to get through enough of the content, and I have not played through, I'll just go ahead and admit that, I have not played through the whole entire game. Still, to this point, I have not played through the whole entire game. Frankly, I gave up and put it back in the box. And that's definitely going to be part of this discussion. The other reason is I wanted to give myself time to kind of think through my experience with this game. And it's not just that it is Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. You also have Gloomhaven. So for the rest of this, we're going to refer to this as Jaws of the Lion. We're also going to talk a little bit about just the standard Gloomhaven game. But I wanted to give myself, time to really think about what I felt about it, collect some good thoughts. And the reason is because, one, I want to make sure that people understand this is a good game. I mean, it wouldn't be on the channel. I wouldn't be producing content on it and spending my time producing content on something if it wasn't a good game that you should play, you should experience. It's a good game. I just think that it has its areas that can
almost drive people crazy. And
I'll just be completely honest with it. I've seen some other reviews out on this where folks were very transparent. It was still a positive, like, hey, this is a good experience. I think that you're going to get that from my video as well. But there were some really fair points that were made around the design and around the game. And I just think for a game like this, I think they missed the mark when it came to Jaws the Lion. I think this was a chance to take the Gloomhaven platform and make it something even easier to get into. And I don't mean the fantastic design in the book in this one, where you could just open it up and play through scenarios and learn to play. That was genius. That should have been done in Gloomhaven from the very beginning. And frankly, that platform would have been even bigger and I think more welcoming to more people. So that was genius from that perspective. However, I think that there should have been things with this particular title that made it even more appealing to a broader market, made it easier to get into. There isn't that much that is missing from this game than you will get in the full-scale Gloomhaven. There are some things, but most of all the mechanics, most of all the rules, most of all the components are still here. They're just done in a much better way. So if you're a fan of the original Gloomhaven platform and you want all those rules and you want all those different things, you're going to find about 90 to 95% of it here in this much smaller box. So if you're a fan from that perspective, you're going to love what's going on here in Jaws the Lion. I just think that the way this was marketed and the way that I think this product was put out in the market, it would have been better, in my opinion, to scale it back even more, to make it to where you could truly solo the game. And that's another area of this that I want to talk through that I'm not a big fan of with any of the Gloomhaven games. And we'll see how Frosthaven works when that gets delivered. I know they're still tweaking some things and working on some things, but one of the things that I think would make this title a lot better is the fact that if you could just solo the game with one character, you have to use two characters to be able to solo go through this game. So you're essentially just playing two different hands, two different characters yourself. The problem with that is that there's so much going on in this game. This is not a game for the faint of heart. There is a lot of different mechanics, rules, and actions that are triggering as you go through a round. You've got to remember to do certain things with cards of the monsters, abilities of the monsters. You got to make sure where's your element board. You got to track all the cards that you have and how those cards' top or bottom actions work together. Right? Then on top of all of that, you got to think about, well, what are the exact actions I want to do in this game? Because Gloomhaven, in my opinion, is very much like a puzzle. Every scenario is very puzzly, and you really have to perform actions in that scenario and use synergies of characters in a certain way to win. If you just like willy-nilly every time, oh, I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to do that, maybe in some of the earlier scenarios you'll get through, or maybe if you get lucky you'll get through, but this is a real thinker. You really have to pay attention to what you're doing, and all the other players around the table have to be paying attention to what each other is doing. You have to be paying attention to the combos of cards that you have. And when you have that much going on, and then you say, okay, as one person, I'm going to sit down to a table and I got to have in my brain what's going on the board in front of me. I got to have in my brain in a separate compartment all of these mechanics of different components that are just the game. Then I got to compartmentalize another area where I'm just thinking about this character in front of me. And let's say you're halfway through the game and you've got an assortment of cards in front of you. And now, to make it even more complex, I got to think about a whole nother character and all of their complexities, and then using those two characters together. Because that's the secret of Gloomhaven. That's the beauty of the design of this game. From a design perspective, it is fantastic. I would even borderline genius on the actual math and mechanics and design that are built into this title. But when you add all that up together and you're just trying to play through a game, by the end of a scenario or two or three, you are feeling mentally exhausted. And it starts to feel like the playing the game is like a job by the time you're going through on your own. So from a solo perspective, I cannot recommend this game because unless... I don't know how else to say it. Like, I can't recommend Gloomhaven as a solo title. The reason why I can't recommend it is because I cannot solo and just get through this game. I get to a point where I'm like, I just don't want to play anymore. I just don't want to do another scenario. And maybe it's because... Well, let me save the whole campaign aspect. Let's go back and let's hit the whole progression of this game. If you are a gamer and you like that feeling, because it does have elements of like a video game. If you like that feeling where you cannot progress unless you beat a level, you're going to love the design of this game. I'm not a fan of that design. I am more of a fan of designs that follow like Lord of the Rings Journey in Middle-earth. Games like that, where there's lots of games like that, but that's one of them that comes to mind. I really, really like that game. I would much rather play that game than play Gloomhaven. Just honestly, I really like those style of games that offer more of that pathing mechanic, where if you win, you go path A. If you lose, you go path B. It's always forward progression through the game, and I like games that follow that design. I'm just not a huge fan of games that follow the design of you don't get to progress unless you beat the level, unless you beat this little section. If it only took 20 minutes to go through a scenario or 30 minutes to go through a scenario, Okay, it's not too bad. But it never does. And the people out there that play this game know what I mean if you're being honest. It never does. It takes a good chunk of time to get through one of these scenarios. Why? Because you don't want to lose. Because you know if you lose, you can't progress forward. You got to just do the scenario over again. So you're putting a lot of probably more thought than what's necessary into every card combination you do. And now this gets me back to the complexity of, I don't like that you have to solo the game and you have to play two characters, because now you've doubled the level of complexity and the level of analysis paralysis on every single move you're going to do on every single turn of this game.
Because you do not want to lose.
Because if you lose, guess what? You get to do another hour and a half of what you just did. From my perspective, two tweaks, and I say tweaks, but none of these things are easy, two changes to this title of saying you could solo with just one character will change the scaling of how much XP, how much rewards you would get, will change the scaling of how many enemies are on the board. We'll just scale it back where you can just play with one character. That alone, I think, would massively change the solo experience with this game. And I might actually go completely back over on the other side of the fence of saying, you know what, I'd love to sit down and solo this game if I only had to control one character. And I only had that level of complexity going through the game, because there's so many other things that you've got your mind on. You don't need to have your mind on two full-scale characters at the same time. I say that because this game is a very enjoyable experience with 3 or 4 people sitting around the table. Why? Because now you only have your mind on one character, and now there's 3 to 4 people that are thinking about and remembering all the different little finicky game mechanic things you got to do round to round, to turn to turn. You've got multiple people thinking through that stuff, not just all of that thought on one brain. Which then makes the gameplay experience much more enjoyable, and you can really focus on your character and enjoy turn to turn, move to move, and action to action, versus always thinking, oh, did I remember this and this and this, or going a round or two ahead and being like, oh, I got to go back and now retroact on things because I forgot to do certain things. And this game is very rule heavy. All of the Gloomhaven platform is very rule heavy. So if you do forget or skip or mess something up, it's not always as easy to go back and say, oh, this would have been this way and that would have been this way. It really can change the outcome of what's happened over the course of that next round if something is forgotten. And the other change would be make the game forward progressing. It would be phenomenal if Frosthaven came out and it was a forward progressing game where it didn't matter if you beat the scenario or not. You could still progress forward in the story. Maybe it's a different sticker that goes somewhere else. Maybe it is, you can progress, but you just get less of experience or less of items that you can get or gold that you acquire, but you can still progress. You just kind of take the loss and limp away as you lick your wounds. But I think what that's going to force over time, if you allow that, which I would still be okay with, is at a certain point the game might get too hard because you haven't been rewarded by those wins. That's where I think you get into the random, okay, we're just going to do some random dungeon diving, which the base Gloomhaven game has, which is really cool, where you can just, you can just set up a auto-generated, or a dynamic dungeon, just kind of generate a dungeon, and it's not necessarily one of the missions. You just kind of go on a dungeon dive to skill up or to level up, much like you would in a video game, to get yourself a little bit higher, to then be able to progress to that next campaign. But you could take the argument of just saying, oh, well, you just do that anyway, right? Not necessarily, because you beat it, you can't move forward, then you have to go off, get a bunch of skill, you have to go back and try that same again, then beat it. Oh, now you've progressed. So by time you get Gloomhaven, that's got, I think, 96 missions. Now, who knows how many missions you've done by the time you play through the whole thing of all the ones you've had to redo. So I think that's another change in this platform that I think would make it so much better, even better of a game. I mean, just two simple things, just two things. Make the game pathing where it's always forward progressing, and make it to where you can solo with just one character. I think those two changes right there make this game way better than what it even is. As I've said, I think this is a much, much better experience when you have 3 or 4 people around a table, you play a scenario or 2 a week, and you really make the content in this box last. That's where I think you're going to get the best experience out of this title. Because the other thing on this that I'm not a huge fan of, I love the campaigns that are built into these. I love the storylines. It's just really not there for me in any of the Gloomhaven stuff that's out so far. Does it have its own storyline? Yes, it does. Does it have its own characters and world? Yes, it does, which I think they did a very, very good job from that perspective. But the actual storyline and how rich it is and how you go through the game and what you learn, it just feels very generic. It just feels like any generic adventure type title. It doesn't have this campaign and the story that sticks with you, that is long term and really meaningful. I have not gotten that out of these titles. If others have, comment below. Let me know what you think. But I have not personally got that. I get that out of other adventure titles, very much so. Games where you're done and you think about for weeks, like, oh, that was such a great campaign, and oh, that was so cool, and those story choices that I made and what happened on this scenario really made this big outcome difference on 2 or 3 scenarios later. You just really don't get that with the Gloomhaven titles. It's more of that feeling of, oh my god, we beat this scenario and we can now progress to the next scenario, where it feels very much the same. You got a bunch of guys that you just sort of have to orchestrate your way through from point A to point B. That's pretty much how every scenario feels. It does get very, very repetitive. So one of the things that I feel like I come away with that feeling that it's very repetitive is because there is so much content. I almost feel like this is almost like a whole nother concept of games that are like 40, 50, 60 hours of campaigning, but really just give me 7 to 10 really good hours of campaigning, and that would be good. That'd be worth my money. It would be a rich story and an experience that can be encapsulated. I think it's a real fail, actually, on lots of different companies to produce these massive, like, here's 100 hours worth of gaming, or 40 hours or 50 hours worth of campaign, because 90% of people are never going to get through all of that gaming. And by the time they do, it'll take them so long, when they're finishing it, they will have no idea what they were doing earlier in that campaign. You need to design campaigns that people can actually work their way through in a normal amount of time and get a really, really rich experience. Put the value into the writing and the storytelling and the experience of the game, and give yourself. I would much rather have that than have a game that has 20, 30, 40, 90 scenarios or 60 hours worth of play campaigning, and it just become repetitive because you just sort of run out of content, and you just start, well, we got to have a bunch. I got to make it feel like it's this big value. I think we need to look at the value of what's in a box differently as we're evolving through game design, to be more focused on the richness of every single scenario, every single bit of that campaign, and make it so good that 10 hours or 15 hours blows away a title that would have 40, 50, or 60 hours of campaign gaming. So that's what's my thoughts, just kind of on the value of what's in the box and how it does start to feel repetitive. It just starts to get really repetitive in how it feels and how it plays out. I think the piece with this that other people are also going to like is the fact... I gotta pause, I gotta get some beer. Oh, so good. I needed that. All right, so the other thing that I think people really like about this, and that makes this one a little bit different, is its legacy style. And that's one of the things that will keep you going, I think, through some of these other, hurdles that I've kind of talked about as you're moving through this title. I just got to be honest. Like, anytime I feel like I'm playing a game and I feel like I'm struggling to keep progressing, there's something that's wrong. But one of the things that keeps luring you back in are these little wax-sealed boxes. Or really not wax-sealed, it's like a sticker, but they're little sealed boxes. And that's the legacy aspect of this game, that you just want to keep progressing to figure out, oh, I wonder what's in this envelope. I wonder what's in this little box. I can hear it shaking around in there. It's got to be another miniature. It's another miniature I can paint, or another little, maybe a shrine, or maybe some type of little object that you're able to get from the legacy aspect that this title offers. And that is one thing that I do really like from this platform, that you don't really get from some of these other adventure games that are out there that might have a richer campaign or progression and pathing. They usually don't have these legacy style, aspects. And I almost feel like there needs to be, if this platform would literally just add the ability to solo with one character, have pathing, and have a better engaging campaign, it would be the best adventure title out on the market, period. It would probably crush everything else out there if it had these additions to it. And the only thing that I do worry a little bit about Frosthaven, I did back Frosthaven. Yes, I still backed it. I still did it. Because I think you had this feeling of like, oh, I got to get it. It's like number one on BGG. It's like the best game ever. This game was on my channel. The very first. I can remember sitting down to a table with Isaac before anyone knew who Isaac Childress was, before anyone knew what Gloomhaven was, when it was still in prototype form. I remember sitting down at a table at a convention and playing with him, playing Gloomhaven, and talking about what this game could be, or how it could evolve, or, what it would end up being someday. And I think it ended up being all the things he really ever envisioned and wanted it to be. I mean, this game has had more success than probably any other game ever made. But at a certain point, after having Gloomhaven and not being able to complete that game, because I just, frankly, the same thing, I just kind of boxed it up and never went back to it, because, after a certain point in time, you forget the rules, and you're like, I don't want to really read that 54-page rule book again in the original platform, and I don't want to set everything up. It takes a lot of table space. I got all these other games that I've acquired over the years. I want to kind of play those. One thing leads to the next, and you just never really get it off your shelf again. Then the new Jaws the Lion comes out, and you get that, and you unbox it, and you think, oh, it's going to be way easier, and it is a little bit easier to get back into it because of the design of the book, and you do have, less components, it seems like, and the way they're designed, and you play again, but then you just fall kind of into that same trap where it's like, it's starting to feel like, do I really want to spend the next hour and a half playing another scenario of this, or do I want to spend an hour and a half playing something else? You got to take the trade-off of that value. And now we got Frosthaven coming. And is Frosthaven just going to be yet another one of these experiences that is kind of the same thing, that after I got this and sort of jumped back into it again, it sort of kind of brought all those things up again? Because when Gloomhaven came out, it was on this channel, and I gave it a 10 out of 10. Because at the time, it was something so much more grand and so bigger, and just, it was a phenomenon in the gaming market at that period of time. But I think over the years, as games have evolved and changed, and publishers have determined how to sort of create those games that have those sweet spots of content versus storyline versus how much is in this box for a certain price, it just sort of seems like Gloomhaven has stuck to the tried and true, this is how the system works. And it hasn't really evolved to work any different. So, I don't know. That's just, these are just my thoughts on it. I still stick to the fact that if you play this game a certain way, I think you're going to have a great time with it. If you take this game in doses, I think you're going to have a really, really good time with it. And if you're into that hardcore kind of gaming experience, and I really do feel like you got to be a gamer to be able to really enjoy this title. This is not just a gateway to sit friends down and say, let's play Gloomhaven. Then I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this, and you're going to love the Gloomhaven game. However, if you don't want a game that way, and none of those things appeal to you, this is very much not going to appeal to you. And you may be a person like me that loves the hardcore side of things, but gets into it and then just finally says, it's enough. I can't just keep progressing. It's just enough. Like, I'd rather play something else. I want to be involved in this rich campaign and story that I'm just not getting here. So, that's my thoughts on Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion. Again, I don't want people to watch this video and walk away and see this on a shelf and say, I'm never going to give it a chance, or I'm just not going to get it because of maybe what you hear here in this video. Don't do that to yourself. Listen to what I say, watch other videos, look at other people's opinions. There are other review videos that came out on this game, and people were like, this is the best thing ever. This is an unbelievable follow-up to Gloomhaven. It's the best thing ever. You're going to love it. If you love Gloomhaven, you're going to love every second of this. You're going to play it all the way through. It's great solo. It's great with people. Doesn't matter how it is. Gloomhaven, we love it. Right? You're going to find that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has different gaming styles and things that they like. So if you're going to give Gloomhaven a chance, get this. Don't get Gloomhaven. Don't get Frosthaven if you haven't already backed it. Get Jaws of the Lion, because it comes at a pretty low price point for what is in this box. Like, the amount of value and content that's in this box, pound for pound, compared to other games, you are getting an incredible value inside of this box. So if you're going to try it, get Jaws of the Lion to try it. If you don't end up liking it, or you fall into the same thoughts or feelings that I have as I've played this game, you're probably going to get far enough through where you're going to get enough value. You're going to get some awesome little miniatures that you can paint up. So that's it, team. We're going to wrap up there. I probably can continue rambling about my thoughts on this, but, I really just wanted this one to be more of just an open, unscripted, somewhat of a one-way conversation, unless you put some comments below that we could have a conversation on. I really wanted it to be more of just an open thought. Open up. It's an open, honest talk on the Gloomhaven platform, Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. So, if you are interested more in this game, again, you can check out our unboxing of Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, where I do go through the entire, everything that's included in the box. There are a number of other videos out there on Gloomhaven. If you're interested on how to actually play the Gloomhaven title, that video is on the channel as well. You can check that out if you're interested in that. Otherwise, hit that like, click subscribe below to join the team. Keep rolling them crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.